he was All right, everybody, good evening. It's 6 p.m., July 14th, 2026. So you know what time it is. It's time for the Planning Commission. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. We're going to go ahead and start with a call to order. We're hoping a couple more join us by the time it's all said and done, but we'll start with a call to order and the roll call starting with my far left, please.
Commissioner Shin,
Deb Cameron,
Jackie Edmondson.
And I'm Thomas O'Brien. First order of business is we need to review and either amend or approve last meeting's minutes. As a reminder, everybody votes in this, even if you did not attend. Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes? And if so, does somebody want to form a motion, please?
I move that the minutes be approved as written.
Commissioner Cameron moves to approve.
I'll second.
Commissioner Edmondson seconds. Hearing a motion in a second. Is there any debate? Seeing none, all in favor of approval, raise your hand. All opposed, like sign, and that motion carried unanimously. Do we have any organizational procedural items? All right. It appears no unfinished business as well. All right, so then we have new business. Thank you, Madeline.
good evening, everyone. Just give me 1 second to share my screen. The first and only item on our agenda this evening is a rezoning for 1200 and 1240 Ashwood Parkway and 4754 Ashford Dunwoody Road. This is a request for a rezoning from the Office Institution District to the Planned Development District for the construction of 122 townhomes. A little bit of background on the site. This is an existing office building. The site itself is about 11.5 acres. It has a large parking field. The current OI zoning does not allow for residential development, so that's what's triggering this request for the PD zoning. As far as the access goes, there's one existing curb cut into the site that services the whole building, and that entrance is aligned with the new extension of Ashwood Parkway that goes to Meadow Lane. The proposed development is for the 122 townhomes. There are 3 different townhome models on this site. There's 2 different types of rear-loaded townhomes, and these are just elevations that illustrate what they would look like and the types of materials that would be used. This is the other rear-loaded townhome, and they also have a front-loaded townhome. The rear-loaded means that they park in the back, and then the front-loaded means that the garage is in the front. The vehicular access remains the same for the site, so it lines up again with that Ashwood Parkway extension that goes down to Meadow Lane, and then Ashwood Parkway also connects to Ashford Dunwoody Road. There is a new proposed streetscape, which would be a 6-foot tree buffer and a 10-foot side path, and that would extend along the entire frontage of this property. They're also going to be replacing trees within the medians along Ashwood Parkway. Along their frontage, there's a lot of just dead and dying trees in that area. So it'll just spruce it up and make it much nicer. There are no other street improvements proposed here. As part of the project, they'll be fixing up that existing stormwater pond, making it a much more functional space and much more aesthetically pleasing. There would be a path around the pond. That path would both serve as a public access walking path, but it also doubles as additional emergency access for things like fire trucks. And there's also an easement proposed to connect north and south on the site. That's shown in orange, and that's part of our future street grid and perimeter center. So it's not a full street right now. And there's not much of a street grid there, but it's anticipating a larger street grid as some of these islands of older office buildings and apartment blocks redevelop. We are asking them to provide easements so that in the future we can build out that street grid. The one example of that would be that extension of Ashwood Parkway that connects to Meadow Lane. I just created this graphic so it's a little bit easier to tell, just because this one it's hard to tell what the context is. So hopefully this makes it a little bit clearer what that easement would be for. But essentially, as things come across our table, we are asking applicants to provide them. The zoning is a planned development district, so this is different than our typical zoning districts. They're going from OI to PD. And PD means that they have an overall development plan. They don't necessarily have a set of already written out zoning regulations that guide development. They essentially propose, this is our project and these are the rules that would dictate what would be allowed there. Essentially, their overall development plan is specifically just for the single family attached project. It would allow a maximum of 122 units, and those units would have a maximum height of 45 feet. I'll quickly go through the rezoning approval criteria. If you have questions about these specifically, we can go into them in more detail. Essentially, within our new comprehensive plan, this is in the perimeter center transition area. This is a lower intensity area where things like missing middle and townhomes are the preferred style of development, as opposed to our core perimeter area, which envisions a little bit more density and a little bit higher intensity uses. So this does conform to the comprehensive plan. And it would also complement the surrounding uses. The scale ranges from, around 3 to 4 stories for the residential development. There are also 8-story offices, and then there's also the commercial retail development as well. But as far as the scale goes, it is compatible with the area, and it's also an appropriate scale for that transition between the perimeter core and the perimeter transition to the single family neighborhoods that are more to the north. When we're looking at the economic use of this property, it is an older office that is further away from MARTA and further away from our perimeter center core. As a result, it's just not doing particularly well. In general, perimeter center has a high vacancy rate. And this building in particular, the vacancy rate is over 50%. It's probably closer to like 80 or 90% vacant. And it's just not viable for long-term use on that property. And it's not the townhome development is not something that would adversely affect the surrounding properties either. And again, this changing office market is what is prompting this rezoning request. The site itself doesn't have any historic buildings or any archaeological resources that we're aware of. And then when we're looking at things like transportation and schools, as far as transportation goes, the streets there were designed for Ashwood Parkway, were designed to accommodate a really higher volume of traffic from a much larger office building. A 122 townhome unit doesn't necessarily compare to that. So there's not any street requirements or any street improvements that we're asking them to make beyond, the sidewalk improvements. And so we anticipate that it's not going to excessively burden those existing streets. And when we're looking at the schools currently, actually in Dunwoody, a couple of years ago, this was much more of an issue, but our grade schools are under enrolled currently, which will eventually trickle up to Dunwoody High School, which is experiencing, a much higher enrollment for right now. We are able to look at high school students, like we have very granular data for where those students are coming from. And just the bulk of high school students are not coming from our townhome developments, so we don't anticipate it causing too much additional pressure on the schools. So overall, based on our analysis, we are recommending approval of this rezoning to the PD district, and that's subject to these 10 conditions. And the overall development plan is the big bulk of what we're considering here. Those are all of the development requirements for this zoning district. And then we just have some other exhibits, just specifically calling out the elevations and renderings, that future connection that I discussed earlier, and then the stormwater pond landscaping. But I will go ahead and turn it over to the applicant for their presentation. Use these buttons.
Use this side to side. Before we start, I've got handouts of it. Do y'all want these or do y'all see it on the screen well enough?
The screens look fine. We'll happily take anything if the presentation,
Thank you so much.
yeah.
Thank you so much. Kenneth Wood, 350 Research Court, Peachtree Corners, Georgia. Thank you so much for letting us speak tonight. We're really excited about this project. I'm joined here tonight also with members of Ashton Woods. They will be the vertical builder. If you're familiar with ARIA, probably the closest development. There's also some in Brookhaven nearby. So really excited for them to enter into the Dunwoody market and look at building a very high-end product for here. Kind of to this point today, we've had three different major meetings. We had a community meeting that was well attended up the street from here. We were able to get comments from that. It informed the plan. I'll go over some of the different landscape buffers that we put in based on that meeting. Some of the different requirements that we set for the streetscape, meeting with the city and also getting those comments as well as the trail and everything we tried to do with that trail. We also met with the Dunwoody Homeowners Association, and then we also met with the overall. There's an HOA that will become a part of that is already the office is already a part of, and it consists of the Publix with branch properties of the office buildings, the condo, the hotel. Like it's a big HOA, and they oversee the pond and some of those different areas. And so this would be in concert with helping out for that. This is the side area. As you can see, everything is surrounded by very similar uses. This is a perfect site. Me being a planner, living just down the street, from here, always looked for a really nice townhome development. And this one's right in that walkability area. Townhomes are really an amazing use, especially when it's walkable and you're able to get to so many uses, Publix, restaurants, retail uses that are right there in the area, and also traffic distribution. It meets all the intent, as was talked about earlier, about the core vision and intent for the plan as we're looking at where you're going from it. And you have the plan itself. And what we try to do is really articulate it. We met with the arborist out on the site. That whole frontage is going to be redone. And so you'll have the 6-foot landscape strip, the 10-foot sidewalk, and then new planning. So if you see what Publix kind of did with the new plantings, the new strip kind of going down through there, that will be the new vision. We're even going to try to take out some of the trees that are kind of pest trees that we talked about with the arborist in the center road, just to try to clear that up as well from a maintenance responsibility. And then as you drive down the street down Ashwood, all of those homes will front there. So they'll be a couple of feet higher than the road with a couple of steps, and you'll see the front of the townhomes. So it'll kind of create an entire streetscape down Ashwood. And then you'll have the lake, and we're planning the 10-foot trail all the way around the lake, plus a stub to go behind the shopping center where you see the sushi place right over here, Sushi Kingdom, I think it's called. So that can be a future trail to get you over here to City Hall. And then where that trail goes from there could be exciting about going back over toward Dick's Sporting Goods, hopefully eventually one day. But we want to make that connection so that is set up for the future and then start those conversations. We also have just kind of like you see on the Alpha Trail or the Beltline, different places. We are fronting that trail, as you see on that kind of eastern side, and we're fronting the lake with those townhomes. And then in the middle, all the townhomes face either a green space or they face kind of another green space that's set up with the parking. Only the perimeter townhomes are the front loaded ones. Those are our larger units. We range from the ones on the front being closer to 2,000, 2,100 square feet, and the ones on the back go up to 2,800 all the way up toward closer to 3,000 square feet. So they're much larger with a big range. And like we said, there's 3 different product types throughout the development as you go through. These are those connections we were talking about, looking at bringing in those future roadways if the development above us ever comes to fruition to be redeveloped. This is kind of where some of those definitely trails come from, and the reason we're stubbing that way, trying to conform to all these different routes. And this is kind of that pedestrian circulation that you see throughout here, as you see on the plan. These are the buffering areas. We have townhomes just to the west of us. And the Ashton Woods actually developed the second phase of those townhomes. And so what we've talked about with the neighbors we're able to meet with, there will be new evergreen screening put in for that line that you see there. And so those will grow up very tall, 30 to 40 feet, and be able to screen. The same thing. We want to screen the towns, and they want us to screen from them. So it's a equivalent use on each side, as well as screening on the north side from the apartments. And then we're going to preserve a lot of the trees around the lake. We're going to be able to go in and take out, there are some dead, dying, and hazardous inventory trees that are around the lake. So we definitely want to be able to take those out and really put that trail in so that it feels like you're kind of in a different place. And then update the lake so that it becomes part of what looks a lot better. Back in the day, I remember, being in Atlanta for a long time, the lakes looked really, really good, even the ones that were across the street. And so really wanted to try to bring that back so that you have a walking trail that can go all the way around and enjoy that. That will be a public use trail, and also the sidewalks going up to Ashford Dunwoody would too. And like I said, all high quality materials that Ashton is looking at using for the development, several different type of patterns that we're looking at using for it. And so trying to bring a really cool development. We had a couple of 3D images. The only thing to kind of ignore on this is since it's a lake and want people to be able to engage the lake, we would not have the fence along that edge. We're going to grade it so that it's not a requirement to have the fence, but be able to have the trail along there. But this kind of articulates just how the townhomes can engage the trail on the lake, and how that they can look, and how that trail can look kind of being all the way around from there. And so in closing on this, wanted to really take into the account, we really tried to face open space. We have an amenity area with the pool as part of the community, fronting the roads, the trail, the new trail all along the front. So we're really trying to blend into the fabric of the community and really get an exciting townhome very close in to the core of Dunwoody. This is kind of just on that other side from the core, and really excited of what that can be. But I'd like to relieve any amount of time. There might be others that want to speak as well too. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I'm sure there are going to be questions for you, but the first thing we like to do is hear from the folks that are here, and there may be some additional pieces of paper that have been presented. If you would like to speak to us, we'd like to hear from you. All we ask is that you fill one of these out and give it to Paul. What I will tell you is traditionally we have 10 minutes for, 10 minutes against. However, we want to make sure all the voices are heard. So what we're going to do here is, well, I can't say we're going to do it, but I'd like us to, is if we start exceeding that, we're going to have to put a pause on things, extend time, vote on it, and then move forward. But we do want to hear voices. That's why we're all here. So I'm going to go ahead and have us start with the fours. Tim Brown, is Tim here? Did it? I thought I saw, okay, so maybe I did see him step up. Well, you know what? Then we're gonna go ahead and if it's okay with everybody, we're comfortable doing the againsts first and hopefully letting Tim collect himself. Okay. All right. We're gonna go ahead and then start with the against. We're still gonna be on a running clock, but like I said, we're gonna find our way forward here to try and hear everybody. Please be mindful that there are several folks who do want us to hear what they have to say. Brennan, Kate, please come on up. Share your name and address if you please, and then we're happy to hear what you have to say.
Share my name and address?
Yes, please.
Brennan Kate, 4725 Cypress Commons. I guess I'm not really for or against. I just wrote against because I wasn't sure like the thought process that went in to like this proposal. Like, was there thought of redeveloping that into more like green space or anything like that? And the reason I'm asking that is because I feel like the closest green space that this part of the community has is like Ravinia, which is, a mile and a half down the road. And so I just wanted to understand better what the thought process was, behind proposing townhomes here rather than more green space or community space in that area.
Okay, thank you. Next up, please, Megan Martin.
Hi, I'm Megan Martin. I live on Ashwood Parkway. And I had specific questions, which I did speak to already about the association, because currently if you drive down Ashwood Parkway on any given week, you're gonna see trees down, lights out. One, the association isn't currently doing their job. The current site that you're talking about redevelopment isn't being managed or maintained, right? There's always trees down around the pond, which obviously there's a plan to address. But in the short term, it's not being addressed. Nobody's holding anyone accountable to maintain that property, right? The sidewalks are routinely blocked. The streets normally, like branches are in the road routinely. And then, I think the future plan to stub out additional roads is pretty hypothetical, right? And so you're looking at, and you can say that there's a lot more traffic with an office building, but this office building one isn't active. And since that office building was probably well leased over, let's say 75%, you didn't have that development across the street with the shopping center where you were getting the volume of regular traffic, especially with the gas station. So I think as a resident living on that street, I can wait multiple light cycles to turn left onto Ashford Dunwoody Road as a pedestrian. Again, it's a dangerous place to be a pedestrian already. Trying to cross Ashford Dunwoody is dangerous. Trying to cross where the shopping center is and use the sidewalks is dangerous. Nobody's paying attention. Nobody's paying attention to if pedestrians have the right of way. So I think having all of the traffic from the townhome center flow through one main entrance will be detrimental to the people that already live there. But again, I think also having multiple entrances would be great, but that's pretty hypothetical at this point, right? So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Is it Amit Bhakta?
Hi, I'm Amit Bhakta. I'm at 1128 Holly Avenue as part of the Gramercy Townhomes, which is a complex west of the development. I want to echo the concern regarding the infrastructure. I moved in 2018 before that whole Publix complex was redeveloped, and the roads handled the traffic fine. As soon as that opened, things changed. All these cars that go to the gas station are constantly moving on that road to make that left, which was mentioned. Also during school time in the morning, during carpool, where the whole Gramercy complex plus that apartment complex is zoned to Austin Elementary. So there's constantly a line to make a left at the same time. So adding the 122 homes in that area, I feel like the whole development should be tied to doing something to the infrastructure to accommodate the increased traffic. Having lived there for 8 years, that whole parking lot with that commercial building is usually empty. Like my kids ride bikes there. Like no one's ever there. It's almost like a dead zone. You never see anybody even turning into that complex, or rarely do you. So that's one thing. The other thing is the concern with the master HOA. Currently, as part of Gramercy Townhomes, we're part of the master HOA that I'm not even completely sure what we contribute versus what this commercial property currently contributes. With the pond and everything that they're taking over, how will that change their contribution to this master HOA currently as a commercial property and then rezoned to a residential? Does that change? I haven't heard anything specific regarding that, like how our contribution to that HOA will change. So those are two things that I want to address.
Thank you. Bob Wittenstein.
Robert Wittenstein, 1146 Bordeaux Court. This is a great development, and you should deny it anyway. And the reason you should deny it is because they are requesting planned development, and that's an incredibly inappropriate use for this rezoning. Planned developments are for multi-use on multi-lots. It's a specific zoning category that's been designed to allow us to create things that can't be done with the other parts of the zoning code. This is simply a rezoning to multifamily. And by letting them come in as a planned development, we're opening up the door for lots of single plots with single uses to bypass our zoning code. And this is a slippery slope, and these folks should be told to go back, change the zoning classification to the right one, and maybe it's PC2 or PC3, whichever zone they're in. But by letting them come in as a planned development with a single lot for a single use creates a precedent which is really dangerous for Dunwoody. And if they come back with a different zoning classification, I would certainly support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary Martin?
Hi, I'm adversely against this. And my major concern, first of all, Mary Martin, I live at 902 Ashford Dunwoody. So I live on the other side of the street, but I do shop at Publix and those other things there. And I would agree with a few comments from the other people trying to get out. And I don't know if any of you live there or ever try to exit, but when you try to exit, since the new Publix has gone on in, there is a line of traffic either to go straight or to go left at the light on any given time of day constantly. Sometimes it backs up past where the Wells Fargo is, about halfway. And I just see this getting worse and worse and worse. It will burden the streets. The streets cannot accommodate. I would also like to say that at the end of the street, going toward the west at the top where Walton is and Gramercy is on the right, people park on the road on any given day, any given night. That shouldn't be allowed, and that continues to happen. As you go into Walton, it's hard to go around those cars, and many of them park away from the curb. So I just see that getting worse as well. I think there's too many homes and townhomes already in Dunwoody. And personally, I've lived here 8 years and enjoyed it. And there just continues to be more and more and more buildings constantly growing. And I just want to say, when is it going to stop? Please make it stop. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul, are we okay on time? Okay. All right. Barry Epps, please.
Hello, my name is Barry Epps. I live at 4733 Cypress Commons, so I'm in the Gramercy townhomes. I moved in there in 2010, and so I was there back when we had the pond or lake and the three restaurants, P.F. Chang's and Schmidt's and Brio, and it was just a great atmosphere. And I kicked myself because I didn't get involved, or at least bring myself up to date, when the shopping center was built, when they basically filled in the pond and built the shopping center, especially the QT. And the traffic that shopping center and especially the QT brings is pretty mind-blowing. It's amazing. As a matter of fact, if you pull into the shopping center next to the Wells Fargo in front of the QT, there's always a traffic jam. There's just cars and trucks, and it's really a mess. The logistics there are kind of crazy, but and I wanted to attend tonight just to kind of get an idea of what the plan was, and it's a beautiful plan. Actually, my condo, the front of my condo will face the back of the new development. And right now, the front, when I look out the front or walk out in the front of my condo, we have a buffer with trees and a fence, and you can't really see a whole lot on the other side, and it's a beautiful view. My concern is, what's that going to look like when all of a sudden I've got these huge condos backing up to it. So I'm against it, and I'm sure that that didn't go too well, certainly with the developers. But I feel like I didn't speak up when the shopping center and the QT were approved, and I just wanted to put my 2 cents in. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have anybody else who wishes to speak against? Okay. Got one more. Paul, are we okay on time?
20 seconds left. 20 seconds.
All right. Let's go ahead and, no, hang on, hold on a sec. We want to hear what you have to say. Hold on a sec. No, hang on a sec. Hold on 1 sec. 1 second, please. I want to go ahead. Can we get a motion on this?
That we extend the time for people opposed and of course the people in favor by 2 minutes.
Second.
Motion and a second for 2 minutes. Any debate? All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed, like sign. That carries unanimously. We'll add an additional 2 minutes to the hopper.
Hi, thank you. I had a couple of questions. The first one is
Could
about,
you state your name and your?
oh, Julia Parker, 4725 Cypress Commons. I live in the Gramercy community. The first one is about parking, which was already brought up, and just if there is a plan for that development, because at the Gramercy, that is what we are suggested to do if we have an overflow of guests or visitors, or even people who don't have a spot to rent within our community, is to park on that street just in front of our community. So just wondering what we would do there, if there's any plans to address parking on the street. And then the other one is about the pond. I agree, it does look lovely, and I understand like that's great to want to come and clean up the pond. I know it kind of went through it with the new development, got really gross for a while. But as nature does, it has started to kind of take care of itself, and there is an ecosystem there now. So I'm just wondering, one, what are the plans for that? There are, ducks, geese, turtles, families. I walk by there every day. So I see them, they have their chicks every year. It's a whole thing. So just wondering what the process will be for handling that with care and responsibly. And then also, is the pond just going to be for residents only? Is that going to be private, or will that actually benefit the community? Just because, as the point that was also already made, we could use a few more spaces, especially in this pocket of Dunwoody. It's a little bit dry. I know we have some parks that are a drive away. But yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Will anybody else be speaking against? All right, seeing none, we're going to shift over to the fours. Looks like we've got at least a couple of folks that wish to speak in favor. Let's go ahead and start with Guy DeLaGustina.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Guy DeLaGustina, 1000 at Perimeter. Commenting on 4, thinking about the use of land, right? It's a good use of land. It's 122 or whatever the number of homes, people that will be able to live in this place that we love so much. I live in townhomes. I think they're a great compromise. We've been to many of these meetings where townhomes seem to be a good compromise. Over high density, some people are against with. So I think it's a good compromise, good use of land. That office park is now going to become better. Address all the concerns that the neighbors have, put all these conditionals, right? The better infrastructure and all that. But this good use of land, chance of those families also to put their kids in good school districts. So I think we need to consider that as the paramount decision making here. Thank you.
Thank you. Tim Brown, representing DHA. Tim Brown.
45.
I think we've lost your microphone. Hold on 1 second.
Now, hey.
All right.
We heard this presentation in May at the May DHA meeting. Couple of things. Ashton Woods is an incredibly good builder. While Aria may be the most recognizable project that they have, they had a wildly successful single-family home project over off Vermac Road that was just crazy good. Homes flew off the shelves. Great builder, and I'm personally happy to see them back in the market. Zoning code aside, I think this is an excellent use of this property. And while it is all townhome product, which is essentially the same buyer profile, the 3 different townhome types represent 3 different square footage ranges, and therefore theoretically 3 different price points, which I think gives this project pretty broad appeal from a consumer perspective. At the DHA, we were attracted to a couple of things about the project. One is, in fact, the reclamation of the pond.
not only for detention, but as a passive amenity, not only for the community, but with the common access. I'm guessing it would be public, that pond would be public, but that would be a passive amenity for the community, and we like that. We were also attracted to the theme of connectivity, both inside the project and with respect to the efforts that are being made in the community at large up and down Ashford Dunwoody Road. There aren't many unanimous votes at the DHA. We have a pretty strong-willed board, but this was unanimous, and the board voted unanimously to support this project to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Will anybody else be speaking for? Come on up.
Kenwood, I just wanted to be able to address some of the comments. Is this the appropriate time?
Well, we're going to have question and answer, but if we have time for the fours, I'm certainly happy to hear you address those
Okay.
before being asked directly to do so.
Okay, awesome. Awesome. So just kind of running down the list, I tried to write down everything that I heard. So the pond, so the idea is that the pond and the trail around the pond would all be public access. And so it would be open to the public. It always has been part of that, part of the HOA. And so that is basically the civic area as part of this. So when we're thinking about this, it's has the attached homes and then a civic area. And that civic area really carries all the way up. There's like a little strip of land. I don't have the thing. There's a little strip of land right behind at the corner too. And we're also planning to do like a little seating area in that strip of land as well. That would also become part of what the public would be able to use. So if you're in Gramercy, you'd be able to walk all the way up on the 10-foot trail, walk around the lake, and then walk up and sit in the little civic area closer to Ashwood Dunwoody as well. So that would all be public as part of that. We do want to keep the pond as a ecosystem. The same thing the young lady talked about was to be able to have the ducks that come there, the different type of animals that are there, to be able to have the same thing going forward. So we're basically just trying to pull out. It's really accumulated from the upstream, a lot of sediment and silt. So we want to be able to pull that out, deepen it, make sure it's in better shape. Stabilize the banks. It has some trees along the banks. The roots they're just gone. They're starting to fall, and it's not safe on some of them. So we want to clear some of that, but we do want to leave a lot of the existing trees. The idea for the trail is to build it kind of through the trees, so you feel like you're in kind of a nature's walk. I know one of the questions was about the open space, green space in the area. I think it was mentioned that it's just Ravinia that has one. We kind of see this as, with us building this trail around the lake, kind of through the woods, and then leaving all that area as common, that this is going to be like a little destination green space and a respite area, that you have the heavy commercial right beside you that you can walk to for entertainment, groceries, really all lifestyle is right there for these residents. But then all the trail and everything we're doing around the lake, we really believe that this is going to be another green space for residents in the area, as well as anybody in Dunwoody that wants to come down. There was a lot of discussions when we first started the project about people coming to the lakes to feed the ducks. And so we definitely want to have that as something that carries forward. The view from the townhomes was another item. Now, so we've been really careful with that. The townhomes that do back up to Gramercy, we pulled them back. You'll see they're further from the property line, and we have the new buffering that is going in. We've already looked at grading plans. Those townhomes sit down about 18 feet below the Gramercy elevation. So if you're looking at it, those sit down even a little bit below the existing parking lot. And so that takes out two of the levels, and then those evergreens will grow up much higher. That same concern is the same concern for Ashton Woods and coming in and building a really brand new community. They want to make sure the buffering and feeling like it's a private yard as well. So we're not trying to change that. We're making sure that buffer is there and intact. The other item that came in was the infrastructure was talked about, and the association. So from the association, there is a master association, and it does go over that lake. We met with all of the association. They were very much in favor of this, and our new association would become part of that. And then the lake would still remain common, is what has been talked about. It sounds like we would pay the same amount because it's based on kind of your land area. that is going there today. So we would still be, the new HOA that would be formed would be responsible the same amount of payments. And it sounds like there has been money set aside to update that lake. That would all come on us instead of us. So that money, I think, would be refunded. It sounded like from the call we had back to some of the HOAs, because they've been building up some of that. And now that we're doing the work, that it would not be needed for that. But that we would be part of the association. And then on the traffic concerns, like I said, in the community meetings, we had not heard anything negative in terms of this. So trying to answer these real time. So we know how the roads were constructed, for the traffic in the area. We're definitely happy as part of the, if approved as part of the permitting process, to look at. It sounds like it's the green time. And there was another young lady that I talked to before the hearing, that there's some green time issues. And it might be that you're sitting there because you're waiting on the left, and as you're waiting, it doesn't turn green, or it doesn't stay green long enough. So we can certainly look at what's called an ICE study, which is intersection evaluation study, and determine if the green time is an issue, and look at that, and be able to talk to the city about that. We've talked to Public Works, to Michael, about this. He didn't see any issues, but in being able to hear this, there are ways that we can help try to look into that. So we want to make sure we're a good neighbor in answering all the questions for that. I believe that is all the ones. We've definitely tried to target looking at something with the signage on the front. The signage is kind of getting old, right there when you first drive in. So trying to match it a little bit more toward what Publix kind of did on the other side, and make the brick and the stone a little bit more new. That was the other item that came up. But if you have any other questions, I can be available. Thank you so much.
All right, I think we will probably have some other questions. What we typically do is start at one end, head to the other. So Commissioner Shen, are you ready with questions? Take it away.
Yeah, so I also live not on this corridor, but right next to it off of Ridgeview. And that would be super great to have more green space in this area, especially kind of what I'm gonna call like the little flipper part of the parcel, of figuring out a use case for that. I walk my dog on Ashwood Parkway like multiple times a day. And so maybe like a dog park or something, from my understanding that would need to have minimal grading impact to maintain the tree canopy on that part of the parcel, but extending that civic use, not just from the pond, but on that corner as it heads up to Ashford Dunwoody. I'm in favor of that as a resident that lives nearby. I do have a question about the pond and the creek that exists there today. Just confirming that the creek is going to be piped and that is consistent with what is north and south of this.
Yeah, so let me just pull up the site plan real quick. Let me share my screen again, just so I can point out the area that you're talking about. I just make sure yeah. So if you can see this little lip on the pond here, behind this lip, there is an open channel. From the apartments to the back, there's some piped areas, and they release into the open, and they're feeding into the pond. Right now, it's an erosive condition. I wouldn't necessarily call it a creek. It's the outflow of the pipes into the pond. But in order to build the trail access and that secondary emergency access, that it's about 175 feet thereabouts of that open channel. And so that short section would be piped. There is special permitting that they have to go through for that through the Georgia EPD and the Army Corps of Engineers, but that would be handled at the LDP stage, but that is part of the plan.
Thanks. My next question, comment, concern is with the parking on Ashford Parkway. Yeah, I see that there are the cars that park towards the tail end near Walton and Gramercy, and that this development would be proposing to widen the road and add 9 parallel parking spaces, I guess for the residents for those townhomes that front Ashford Parkway. But that is compromising the proposed streetscape. So the proposed streetscape, that's one of the conditions, is the 10-foot sidewalk and the 10-foot landscape buffer, right? Or is it's 6 and 10?
Yeah, so our conditions for the streetscape specify that they have to have the buffer and the side path along the entire frontage. We are working with the applicant on developing the streetscape, but whether or not they include street parking, they have to have that 6-foot buffer and 10-foot side path along the entire frontage. That's our position. They are, even if the plans aren't reflecting that right now, if it were to get approved without a condition, it's something we would enforce again during the land disturbance permit phase.
Thank you. And yeah, I would just like to point out that for like street typology for Dunwoody, there's very limited cases where we have a public street with designated parking. I think there's some at Parishional Park. But there's other very, very few instances of a public street that has designated parking, particularly for private use like this. And then my next question is about the coordination that occurred with Public Works on this development. Understanding there's no changes to the intersection control for the neighborhood entrance, like it will be stop controlled, but Ashford Parkway won't be stop controlled.
Do you mean this intersection here?
Yeah.
We have not gone on into the detail about that aspect.
Okay.
I'm so sorry, it's not my area. Ken, my dog, he's an engineer, he may be able to address that better.
Or like mid-block crossing, like right now there's a crossing at the lake entrance. That's about 400 feet from the intersection of Ashford Dunwoody. It would be another like 400 feet to this neighborhood entrance.
This one here.
Yeah.
So what we are anticipating, just based on conversations with Michael, is that this would become like you would have multiple pedestrian crossings, crossing there, crossing across our drive, so that it's much like they mentioned about, pedestrians and someone driving. So you do have the mid-block crossing, but you would also have multiple crossings here as well that we would have to create.
Okay.
Especially with us doing the 10-foot trail. And then just to answer, we do not have to do the parallel spaces. We were thinking that they would be public. They're in the public right of way, but we were just thinking it was kind of a streetscape to kind of look cool on that end. But we had heard that a lot of people just kind of park along the curb, that it's wide enough. So we had just showed them as more of kind of a feature, just something, as like additional public parking there, but it sounds like it's already being parked there. So it's not something that we were putting there. We have a lot of internal parking for the development, so it wasn't something essential for us.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I would probably add a condition to certainly study the Ashford Dunwoody Road intersection, signal timing, at a bare minimum, but yeah, thank you.
Commissioner Shan, is that the I study that was discussed, or is there a separate type of study?
Yeah, ICE's intersection control evaluation analysis. Yeah,
Intersection control analysis.
evaluation.
Okay, intersection, okay.
Sorry, I'm an engineer, so.
No, but I mean, if that's something we end up wanting to feature and something we vote on, I want to make sure we call out what we want. And if that's an I study,
yeah.
Cool. If it's not, I want to know the difference so we can talk about them both.
Yeah.
Okay. Commissioner Edmondson. Oh, Cameron, excuse me.
I guess these are questions for the applicant. Who runs the association right now?
The owner of the land and the office building currently runs the association, in my understanding. So when you drive down there, you have that office building, this one part, branch properties that has all of Publix, and then you have the 2 office buildings on the left. you have Gramercy 1 and 2, there's an apartment, and then there's a hotel. Just it's like, I don't know. They were kind of like, we don't know. They don't really see them too much. Those are all the ones that are there right now. And so they're the ones running that portion of it. But my understanding is the 2 office buildings, the lady that we talked to on Zoom with all those associations, it was the head of the association. She's in the office buildings on the left. And so it sounds like they're responsible for the streetscapes along there and then kind of around that lake area. And so that's why we were talking to them about, we're going to totally beautify it. And then, we want to make sure it stays nice because we had heard some comments that some areas in the trees weren't being dealt with very quickly. But, Ashton would be putting a huge investment here. So we want to make sure that we have those rights too. And it sounds like that's how we would be working out the documents.
So the larger association is responsible for cleaning up the pond and the
Yeah.
streetscape and things?
Yes, and they all put money into doing that, and they have put money into it. There's like a pretty major reserve already. So they were pretty excited to hear we were doing upgrades to the pond.
Is there enough parking within the proposed development for all the people who live there?
Yes, yes. We have guest spaces on the surface as well as we also have garage spaces as well as driveway spaces.
And do the townhomes have 1 or 2 car garages?
They're 2. They're all large. Okay. They're all large townhomes.
Madeline, I have a question for you. Mr. Wittenstein raised the issue of the planned development. How does that impact this, or how does that relate to this proposal?
Our interpretation of the planned development code as it's written right now is that this is an appropriate, use of that zoning district. We allow all properties that meet there is an acreage requirement and this property does meet it. And so they are, allowed to ask for a PD zoning district.
Mr. Brown.
Thank you. I think the other commissioners have asked most of the questions that I had. I do want to note to the applicant on your presentation, I guess forthcoming presentations and presentation to the city council, you've referred to the perimeter core, but I believe this is actually in the perimeter transition zone, part of the comp plan. It's still a use that is encouraged and allowed in that district, just to note for future reference.
Yes, sir.
And that's really about it. I think this is a good development. I don't have too much issue of it other than I'm pretty concerned about the traffic aspect. So I think I'd like to see us, put something in our recommendation for doing that ICE study. That's all I've got.
Mr. Edmondson.
Great. I think it might be a question for Madeline, but I'm just trying to understand the streets a little bit better here. So I've got Google pulled up, and I guess I'm trying to understand where. Let me see. Does Adler connect to Ashford Parkway? Because I'm just trying to see if there's another way out of this, because it looks like you can go down Ashwood Parkway and turn around, or you can go through the development and go onto Ridgeview Road.
Yeah, let me pull up that street map so that we can all see that street.
Yeah. Okay.
This is Alder. Yeah, that connects down on Ridgeview to Meadow Lane. This development specifically has 2 outlets to signalized intersections, so you can go behind the Publix, and this is a signalized intersection at Meadow Lane, and then the other main exit is the signalized exit at Ashford Dunwoody Road, if that clarifies.
Yes, it does. So I guess I'm wondering. Go ahead.
Alder connects through east-west, but it is gated.
It is.
Ah,
it is a gated
okay.
street.
Okay. Okay, that's helpful. Okay, that answers the question. To my understanding then is there's only one way in and out then of the new community, and it's by Ashwood Parkway.
Yep, so Ashwood Parkway, and Ashwood Parkway connects both to Meadow Lane and to Ashford Dunwoody.
Okay, got it. Okay. So that being said, I definitely would agree that we need to do the eye study. I think that that would be very important just to look at that. And I'm also wondering if there's any impact to look at. I'm just concerned as well about the traffic because I've actually sat in that light myself. So I do think it's a very valid concern. So I guess that's important. Although it's not for us to solve here, I do think the concerns with the HOA are valid. Sure.
Might be able to add some light to it. So when they do the controlled evaluation, they will look, since you can go straight and go across Publix, they won't just look at the one light. They'll look at the different modes of operations, and so that they can see what's operating there. But just talking to hearing the comments tonight and talking to some of the residents, it does seem like it's how long that light stays at a certain period seems to be much shorter than other lights, and so it doesn't clear.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see. I know it's not something we can probably address, but I do think it would be helpful to see if there's a way for the applicant to work out the details with the HOA to make sure that the issues don't move further once they get there. I know that that's not the intent of you all. You do good work, but I think then hearing about it, last thing we would want is to see lots of good stuff go in and then the HOA not to support those efforts. I think that was it for me. It's to you.
Commissioner Wallach?
I can't answer that if you want me to. We are required, that whole area is required to be part of the HOA, so we'll definitely have to be there.
If you'll stay, because my first couple of questions are for you. Anyway,
Yes, sir.
How deep is the pond now, and what depth do you intend? Yeah. How deep is the pond now, and what depth do you intend to make it?
There's places where you can actually see the bottom now on the surface, and there's places where it kind of gets like 2 and 3. So it's not very deep. We would definitely want to try to get it to like 4 or 5, something that is more probably like 4 to 6 feet deep, at least as you go toward the middle, so that it's more of a functional, body of water. Right now, that's where the sediment got brought in over years and years and years. There's like islands, and it's just kind of a mast in the middle, and it makes it kind of look a little funky. So we're just trying to make it more uniform, like a typical lake that you would see.
And is it about an acre in size, or how big is it?
It's not quite that big. It's probably about 0.6 acres.
Okay. And is there always water in it?
There's usually a pretty constant flow. I didn't when we had the drought 3 months ago. I was not out there at that time. I've been out there probably 10 times, and it's typically had water in it. So I do believe it can hold a normal flow evaluate, at normal elevation there. But I don't know in the really bad drought we had in kind of that March timeframe if it dried up or not.
No.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Okay. I had a concern that it might have fish in it, and if it were to completely dry up, that would be a terrible problem. Okay. Now, you had also said that the pond is going to be open to the public, not just the people in the immediate area. Supposing somebody wants to come feed the ducks, where are they going to park?
To come feed the ducks?
Yeah.
I'm sure they would park over at the Publix, in the parking lots across, and then you take the crosswalks to the Maltese Trail.
Okay. That's my questions for the applicant. I've got a couple for staff as well.
Okay.
Going back to the question that Mr. Wittenstein raised, and the whole issue of whether it's appropriate for PD or not. If it's including this pond that has some degree of public use, does that begin to make it fit better into the PD category?
Again, our position is that this is an appropriate project for a PD zoning. You know, certainly that can be considered a civic use, which would, you know, if you want to consider it that to be sort of a multi-use project, you know, I support that interpretation.
Okay. Also, Commissioner Edmondson was asking, I think, about Elder Lane. Okay, and we heard the reply that it's gated. Who owns the gate? Is that
It's part of the private townhome community. The map I showed of future connections, you know, again, that's pretty far out into the future, but currently it is gated.
so it is something that would have to be dealt with among the homeowners associations as opposed to anything that would come from a governmental entity.
Yeah, typically for projects like this, so we're not allowing new townhome communities to be gated for this sort of similar reason. And also as things redevelop, this is also why we're asking for these easements. Right now, we're kind of trying to backfill in a street grid into perimeter center. We're trying to take the easy opportunities right now as they're handed to us. So like with this project, which we are in support of, those kind of more sticky, you know, questions would certainly come later down the line, probably when we have all of the other pieces in place. And that would be a much more, you know, different conversation in the coming decade.
So you would build it, as it were, so it connected, but the gate could remain until something else happened.
Yeah, we're not approaching the Gramercy to change their gates or anything anytime in the near future. Like I said, we're just trying to build it in where we can. Once we sort of have a critical mass of, you know, opportunities for connection, I'm sure that's when Public Works would start having those conversations. But again, you know, we have short-term planning, you know, 5-10 years, but we also have our more long-term planning. So, you know, looking out a couple of decades into the future. So definitely not in the short term when we're looking at those townhome developments, but for what we have right now, we're asking for future connections.
See, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You all said, okay, Madeline, I've got a couple questions for you. I've got probably a couple questions for everybody, but Madeline, this is more procedural. If we, instead of considering a PD, were to consider a different appropriate zoning status and the project fails, that zoning status sticks, correct? If that gets approved, correct? Rezoning it would stick with the land regardless of whether the project proceeds. If we change to a different one, but if we kept it at PD, this specific project proceeds or it fails and it reverts. I'm making a statement, but that's really a question. Is that how that works?
I guess are you saying so right now it's been advertised for PD?
Yes.
If it were to,
Let me ask it, well, I'll ask it a little bit differently because I know I'm being confusing. If a PD project gets approved by all the bodies that would need to approve it, and then it fails to be developed for whatever reason, what happens to that PD designation? Does it revert to the prior zoning, or is it only developable under the conditions expressed in the PD?
it's only developable under the conditions expressed in the PD. The PD essentially creates a zoning district that is applicable to the project.
But it's Chair O'Brien, like under state law, it requires public notification, it requires public hearings for zoning to be changed. So we can't nothing automatically reverts back because the procedures wouldn't be in place for that. So under state law, nothing automatically can change to a different zoning district. So the PD zoning would stay in place in that scenario. Someone else could build to the same standards.
Okay, so one might, viewing it through a different lens than Mr. Wittenstein, one might say the PD offers a level of protection because it's very specific to a certain project project type and set of circumstances. And if those circumstances didn't happen, the development wouldn't be built. Whereas with another type of zoning designation, yes, you have standards to which to adhere to, but it's a lot more potentially nebulous than a PD would, where we have certain building types, building materials. Am I correct in that? Help me understand.
That's correct. So it would be specifically tied to the overall development plan that's submitted as part of this, and that can be built. Nothing else can be built.
I'm going to ask Madeline or Paul, just, and this may be a question for Kenneth, but I want to go ahead and start with you all. Heard from several people here that the present HOA may not be the best neighbor or most attentive. How does the power of the HOA change with the addition of a project like this? How do voting rights, how do those become allocated? And is there a certain amount of power, the power shift when a project like this happens?
So the community development department, the city of Dunwoody in general, we sort of have no say over HOAs and how they've constructed their boards. So I don't particularly know how to address that question.
Okay. Do we suspect that the applicant might? I know he's having a conversation right now.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Mr. Wood, we've heard from a few people that the present HOA may not be as attentive as a lot of the folks that live around there would like. How do the voting rights and power shift? How does that change with the event of a project like this? Can you make them into a good neighbor?
I think that it probably only strengthens it based on what I heard. So everyone got on. We had a meeting with all of the members and they got on. And it sounded like it is being managed kind of by a third party. I believe it's Collier's. And so, but on that call, it sounded like they were asking like, who would like to take this over, asking some of the other members. And one of the other members, I can't remember if it was the multifamily, said that they would. It could have even been one of the condo. And so it sounds like there is a change coming to that because they were concerned about, making sure everything was managed. Our concern in wanting to become part of it, we were required, but wanting to become part of it, and Ashton can talk to this, if you've been in any Ashton development, they, set it up, they build everything very high end and they set up the HOAs to be very successful with a lot of money as they start off. And so that we would it's our front door, right? Even more than anything. We have the strip we talked about with the kind of the little leg that would be the civic area and then the lake. And then all of our frontage also is common. So it's the way we've looked at it and talked about it internally is that we're going to maintain it. And if they come in and maintain it, that's great too, but we're definitely going to maintain it because it's right in our front door. And so I think it only strengthens it because our intention is we're budgeting as if we entered this project not knowing there was an HOA and we were prepared to do it all. And so, we're kind of looking at this as we're going to maintain it. If they help out, it would be great. And, but we're looking at it as our front door.
With regard to the HOA, I'm seeing, I think in the paperwork I read, 10% or fewer rentals.
Oh, yes.
In this development.
We're expecting a rental restriction as part of the conditions.
Okay. And it is that HOA or the new HOA as it exists after the development is built that'll enforce that.
Yes, as long as it's in, I come across this in so many places. As long as it's in a zoning condition, HOAs cannot change it. So zoning conditions, and then the HOA has to enforce it. And then the city can also tell the HOA to enforce it because it's part of the zoning conditions.
Okay.
It's when it's a suggestion and it's up to the HOAs that it can be changed by a change of HOA president.
Do you have a price range on these?
I do. I believe they're 600 to 800.
Okay. Last question, is that one entrance enough?
It is very comfortable with that. It's functioned like that, especially because we line up to go straight across. If we didn't line up to go straight across, we'd probably find another, something else we can line up with. But since we can go straight across behind Publix or turn left, we've been very comfortable with it with all the studies we've done. we do agree that we need the information we heard tonight was new information. So it was really good to hear. So we can do the ICE study and figure out, because we don't want to have our residents, as we're trying to sell 600 to 800, also having some type of delay. So if we can look at that and help work with the city on some of that timing, that would be helpful.
Okay, so you don't anticipate resistance if that's something that gets asked for, the eye study or whatever appropriate study be
No,
drawn?
when I met was talking before the meeting and heard that it was a green, there's not enough green time. That's something that we can influence. So we're comfortable with that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, team. I think at this moment, it's probably appropriate for either us to talk amongst ourselves. If there's not much more to talk about, then let's talk about a motion. I've heard at least one addition to anything we'd want to move, I think, if we're going to move to approve. What's the pleasure of the board?
I'm happy to make the motion since I have the condition.
I'm happy to hear it.
Yeah. Okay, I move to approve RZ 2605, given staff conditions, plus an additional condition to conduct a GDOT ICE analysis for Ashwood Parkway at Ashford Dunwoody Road, subject to Public Works approval of recommendations.
All right. Commissioner Shin moves to approve as staff recommends, plus the addition of the studies as she recited that is in the record, and I'm not going to try and butcher. Do we have a second to that?
A second.
Was that Commissioner Cameron?
Yeah.
Okay, so Commissioner Shin moved, Commissioner Cameron seconded. We have a motion and a second. Is there any debate about this? Seeing none, all in favor of approving the motion, raise your hand. All opposed, like sign. Carries unanimously, and we are done with that item. Thank you, everybody. Is there any other business for us to take up? Now comes the time in our agenda where we will entertain public comment. If anybody has something that they want to share, we'd be happy to hear it. Any commission comment before we go? Hearing none. Oh, we have public comment. If you'd like to come up and we can run back to public comment. Yes, sir. Once again, name and address, please.
Shiv Patel, 1128 at Gramercy. Just is this where I can ask a couple questions?
We've already voted on the motion, and
Not to change it, I was just curious of some things that came up.
I might recommend take you up with them outside of this process.
Okay, that's cool.
And
I don't know the process. I was just asking.
Yeah, no, and you're fine. You're
Okay.
fine. And if there's anything you want us to hear, we're happy to hear it.
Okay.
But with regard to reopening it up for additional questions, we've already voted on it. Moving on.
Yeah, I wasn't looking to reopen, just curiosity.
Okay,
Okay.
roger that. Thank
Cool.
you.
Thanks.
All right, commission comment? Seeing none, we'll stand adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
But we be.
So we're